Spark, but that's about it. Hey, everybody, welcome back to this live episode of Think Business with Cindi Grace. Cindi, it's great to connect with you. I always love talking, meeting, and interviewing people that my business coach, Dave Meltzer, introduced me to. A friend of Dave's is a friend of mine. Excited to have you on the show today and really talk about, what your formula of success is and has been, because I think there's a lot to glean for many people who are going to be listening to this not only now, but in the future. And so, you were with Western Digital for a long, long time, and share everybody a little bit about your path and kind of, the formula of your success.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, of course.
I'm privileged to be here today.
Yeah.
So I started working at Western Digital when I was 16 years old as a temporary in high school.
Yeah.
And I loved the company. I loved the people. And for reasons that we won't get into right now, I decided to start working there permanently as I got out of high school and go to college simultaneously while I was working. And so I started out as the literature and sample girl. I literally shipped chips and rails and booklets to distributors. And from there, Western Digital was a small company at the time. And if you know Western Digital's history, you'll know that there's been peaks and valleys, right? We've done very, very well. And then we've been on the brink of disaster on multiple occasions. They used to call us the cockroach of the industry because we just wouldn't go away. And so as I started working, I just started to get to know people in the company. I made myself available. And I looked at people that I thought were role models of what I wanted to be at some point in time. And I got involved with a group of women that ran customer service and marketing at the time. Mm-hmm. And so they put me in customer service. I didn't know what I was doing. And then we almost went bankrupt. And so they let everybody go except for me and one other guy. And so here we were running the entire customer service organization, trying to manage all of the customers. But I had the opportunity to work with our CEO at the time, and his name was Chuck Nisler. I don't know if you know him. He was very big in the Calvary Church for a long time. And he took me under his wing and introduced me to the person who became my mentor, who was Kathy Braun. Kathy was an extraordinary person. She ran marketing at the time in the mid 80s. And by the early 90s, she was president of the company.
Yeah.
She, I worked for her in marketing for several years. And when she became president of the company, she wanted to have someone to be her assistant that she trusted a lot. And so she asked me to be her assistant. And I said, well, I'm not a secretary. I don't want to do that. And she said, well, you don't have to. I'll teach you everything I know about this new business that we're going to get into, which is hard disk drives. Before that, we'd been a chip vendor. We'd been a controller board vendor. We'd done everything around controlling the storage, but we didn't actually own the storage itself. So she was all of about 4'11" and tiny little thing, little voice, but masterminded this big deal to buy a disk drive company from a company called Tandon at the time. And we got in the disk drive business. And don't ask me how she did it, but she got all the right people, put them in the right place. And that gave me a bunch of exposure to a lot of different things. I got to see, how the business was run. I got to understand about the different functions, but most importantly, I got to see that it was possible for a woman to succeed in business. At the time, I couldn't name another one.
What year was this, Cindi?
Oh, 1991, maybe?
Okay.
And in storage, there were no other women. There were 86 disk drive companies at the time, and I couldn't name a woman. I don't remember taking a call from a woman except for friends of hers. There was nobody around. And she could make a man cry in 3 seconds flat. So she had control of an organization that was amazing. And I laugh and say, I mirrored that much later in my career, and it didn't work well for me, but it worked well for her because at that point in time, people were still drinking at lunch, and sleeping with your secretary was a badge of honor, not a criminal offense. So keeping people in line, she needed to do that, and she did a very good job at it. But what she also did was she found smart women and she put them in her organization. She didn't care if you were a secretary, if you were in the cafeteria, where you were. If you were smart, she put you in her organization and let you have a try. And so in the marketing department was filled with women. And she started to layer people within her organization. The vice president level, there were a couple women, HR, there was one in customer service. And she took care of them. She fostered them and she really mentored them. And she did the same for me. I mean, she cut me loose before I was ready to go. It was a very comfortable position, as you can imagine, to be the assistant to the president and know everything that was going on. But she said, you know, sweetie, I always knew when she said sweetie that it was going to be something important. She said, sweetie, it's time for us to part ways. You got to go. If you don't go now, we're going to get too comfortable together and you'll never go and you'll be fine. So
you gotta go spread your wings.
You gotta go spread your wings.
Yeah, and I just want to recap a couple of things. Don't lose your place, but I want to talk about you know, today what I was so intrigued when I talked about you is just your positive attitude, your energy. But I just want to highlight a couple of things that you've talked about as far as your formula and your path.
Oh, sure.
Accessibility, which I think is so key and so fundamental. I'm big on my clients always knowing I'm a business coach, that I'm always accessible to them. I return every call, text, email, same day. So when you talk about accessibility, it's so important. Customer service, you know, I don't know what went on, but I know you were the last person standing, one of two. So you must have been doing something right. And the client experience and experiential and things of that nature. The power of mentorship. What's Kathy's last name?
Braun.
Kathy Braun is, I mean, thank you, Kathy Braun, right? I mean, because what Kathy Braun did and what you do is helping my 13-year-old daughter today and tomorrow. So I thank you for that. You know, you're in a market where in 1991, you're not seeing a lot of women in your industry. And then you have Kathy, who's controlling this and hiring a lot of other smart people, specifically smart women, to grow
in the company,
boardroom, and to grow, and knowing and being able to be pushed out to spread your wings. I mean, those are really big things. And right now we're seeing a lot of people, especially during COVID, this is live, it's September 4th, having to really get out of their comfort zone and push into new environments that they never thought. People are furloughed. People are unemployed. People have been laid off. They're starting their own companies. They're finding an inner spirit that they had in themselves to tap into. So I just want to kind of touch on that element, right? So when you were pushed out of the nest, how did you get through your first couple steps? Because I think a lot of people would benefit from that right now.
Well, first of all, I humbly went into the job understanding that I was a new kid on the block. I wanted to understand the lay of the land and who the players were. And then, you know, where could I add value? So what was the thing that I could bring to the table that would be different than what others would bring, and maybe do it a little bit differently? So when I was in marketing at that time, you know, I was in charge of several disk drive product lines. And, you know, we had to work with engineers. We had to do a bunch of different things that were really out of my comfort zone. But I realized that, you know, because I saw her do it, I knew I could do it.
Yeah.
I knew I had the ability to do it if I had the courage and if I had the personality to be able to fit in. Because at the time, yeah, even today, you have to fit in with your peers, right? Regardless of
that's always
diversity or anything like that, you've got to do that. And so what ended up happening was I started taking different assignments. Every time someone asked me if I wanted to change jobs and do something different, I didn't turn it down, right? And I always took the opportunity, even if I wasn't sure I could do it. And most times I wasn't sure I could do it. But from there, you know, I was in marketing. Then I, you know, led the marketing group, the product management group. And then I went into supply chain. We had a new CEO and Kathy left. And the one thing I'll say about Western Digital and Kathy, she hired really smart people. Every CEO we had until the last CEO, well, Western Digital has a new CEO that started a couple months ago. But the one prior to that for the last 5 years was not legacy Western Digital. Every single one up until that point had been someone that was on her staff at some point in time and had grown into the position. Yeah. So a unique company, but she had a unique sense of finding talent and pushing them into the places that they were going to excel. And that was the first lesson I learned in leadership. Make sure you got the right people in the right job And if they're not, move them around. And then give people an opportunity to go do different things. The scariest thing as a leader is to let your best people go. And yet, what you need to be able to do for the company is to be able to groom those people and to push them out and let them find it their own way and understand that they're capable as well.
Yeah.
And so I think I did a really good job of that when I look back and I look at the people that are still there at Western Digital. There's people that worked for me or that I hired that are all over the company. So a legacy that I really wanted to leave, both men and women, young kids, just, being able to mentor people and be a good leader, and be able to see them spread their wings and really excel. It makes me super happy. So it was hard to do, but it was something that I did.
Well, yeah,
when you ask about my career, my claim to fame.
I just want to comment on that because I'm just taking notes right here for 2 seconds so I can put this in the scroll. You're talking about, if you go back to Kathy, one of the lessons she taught you is hire people smarter than you, never be the smartest person in the room. I mean, that's really, really, really critical. And a great mentor, and this took me a long time to, this is why I want to talk on it. I actually just wrote an article for Forbes that got published this week about mentorship. But this is a thing where I think people get in trouble with mentorship. They have a mentor that they think is a mentor, but that mentor really doesn't have their best interest in mind. They can be very one-sided and selfish, but appear to be a mentor. Because a real mentor is going to push you out of your comfort zone and push you to always be pushing to grow your potential, always being your best, even if that means you moving on from them. And so if you don't have that in a mentor, you can't say this person's a mentor. Well, does that person have your best interest? Well, not really. Well, then they're not a mentor. That person may be, somebody who is, helping you get to helping you with something, but they're not a mentor, because mentors are selfless. And so when you're looking for mentors, I think you need to look for someone, and it's harder in corporate America because it gets a little skewed, who really has your best interest and wants to see you always grow, no matter how it affects them.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And it's tough to be a leader and a mentor and let people go. I mean,
Correct.
That is probably the toughest thing that I've had to do. And it took me a while to learn it. I mean, I knew it, I watched it, but I didn't practice it for a long, long time. But your point about not being the smartest person in the room, the day I realized that I had people working for me that did jobs I'd never done, I realized, okay, you know what? The team is the most important thing. It doesn't matter how good I am at anything I do. I can't do all of this. All I can do is inspire them, paint a roadmap of where we want to go, what we're trying to do, and then move the roadblocks out of their way.
Right.
And if you can do that, your team will be very successful.
Yeah.
And I think, it took me a little while to learn that, but once I did and loosened the reins, and I mean, there are some horror stories, but once I was able to do that, the team just did so well, and in the business excelled. Right. It wasn't me controlling everything anymore. It was the whole group.
Right.
Managing it.
Right. Well, if you look at things and just getting things in alignment, and just the energy of everybody being in alignment, because they know you have your best, they know you have their best interest in mind. They know what their business plan is. They know what the vision is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You got the right people in the right seats, then of course things start to happen in a great way. But that's a leader. That's what a leader does, is orchestrate all of that. So,
and I think not until the last 10 years did I really master that.
Yeah.
I mean, I emulated every mentor or coach I had, let's put it that way. And when I look at it today, some of them have very bad behaviors. And I learned those behaviors because that's how, we interacted with one another. But, I left some dead bodies for a while. It took a long time for me to realize that I was getting feedback from above, always getting feedback from above. But the biggest mistake I made was not asking for feedback from the team.
Yeah.
And once the team felt comfortable enough to be giving that feedback, and we had that two-way interaction, they excelled, we excelled, and everybody made money. And I think everybody's a little better off today and positionally than they were when they started.
Right, because what you're talking about when you ask for feedback from your team, what you're saying, that's a very vulnerable place for a leader, because they're going to be, if they can speak openly to you, they may not always get their way, but if they can speak openly to you and there's no fear, then productivity and alignment goes up. When they can't speak to you, I've gone into so many companies where the CEO and the leader will say, I don't know what's wrong with my company. And then after I do some due diligence, I say, everybody hates you. You're you're unapproachable. You don't follow through on your word. People are scared to give you any feedback because you raise your voice. They know they're on a blacklist if they do, yada, yada, yada. And so that's no way to grow an organization.
Guilty though, as an early leader, I was guilty of a lot of those.
Yeah, I was guilty of it too back in my 20s. But then you learn, and then you got to wake up. Yeah,
you do have to wake up. And I had a great number two who I almost chased out of the job because I was tough. I mean, they called me the Wicked Witch of Western Digital at one point in time. Fair, but I was tough. And, I didn't have a lot of tolerance, didn't have a lot of time, wasn't very approachable. People were scared. I didn't realize that it was that bad, but it was. And when somebody finally had the courage to say, hey, look, this is the problem.
Yeah.
It hurt, and it took a little bit of time to really process all of that. But once I understood and was willing to make a change, I think I was very approachable. Still tough.
Yeah, you can be firm and tough, but if you're approachable, where my lesson was, I remember two things. I was reading a book. This is 25 years ago, Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav. And in it, I don't know if you've ever read the book. It's a great book. In it, he talks about, the ideal personality is when the personality ends and the soul begins. And I thought, I'm out of alignment. And then at the same time, I saw the movie Hook, which is, it's Robert is Peter Pan, but doesn't know he's Peter Pan. And he goes into this, he goes back to Wendy's house, and he's just a complete jerk. And she says to him, Peter, you become a pirate. And I remember watching that thinking, I feel like I'm an asshole. This was like 25 years ago. And so I needed to it was like such an awareness wake up to be like, all right, I got to check myself. And from those two moments on, I started to evolve for myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of that behavior comes from insecurity.
Yeah.
Right. And once I got a coach, I got a great coach, a guy named Gary Selleck, who sat me down and said, hey, look, you know what? You might be the smartest person in the room. They bring a spreadsheet in, you're going to find the mistakes, and they know it. They're terrified. And you need to be a real person, get some balance in your life, and help these people be successful. And so I did. And I think, from a leadership perspective, the best thing you can do is take care of your team. Every Monday I said, thank you for coming back to work. And everyone is different, right? Not one style works for every person to manage them. And a leader's style changes based upon the circumstances in the business. And I had to learn that as well. But if you can do that, and, I've had a couple of great leaders who have been able to do that, the team can get through anything. We lost our entire factory, everything in the Thai flood in 2012. And we were supplying half of the world's disk drives the quarter before on top of the world. And one day the flood came, put us, 20 feet underwater, and we had 4 million disk drives. That was it. And there was only 2 other guys making them at the time.
Yeah.
Going through that whole process of first telling the team it's going to be okay and getting them to trust you in the things that you had to do in that environment taught me a lot, right? Taught me about, compassion, their fears, how to keep them focused, things that we can't control, we can't focus on, right? But we can have a picture of where we want to be. And so I always tried to draw a roadmap of where we were trying to get to, whether it was in a quarter or a fiscal year, or it was customers or market share. And as long as I could make that strategy clear, the team or paint the roadmap, they knew what to do and they trusted because they knew that, I had their backs and that it's okay to make mistakes. That's the other thing that I think a good leader needs to remember. It's
Right.
okay for your team to make mistakes. If they don't, they're not stretching hard enough.
I just said that an hour ago to a client. Literally exactly that same sentence, Cindy. Exactly. They were talking about a mistake. I said exactly that. Yeah. But when you have a crystal clear roadmap, then it's a lot easier to help them see where they went wrong and use it as a coaching and learning moment. Creating a roadmap, I want to talk about that because what I'm seeing and people I'm coaching everywhere, it's all the same with COVID, is everybody's, updating, refreshing, and or in too many cases, creating for the first time a roadmap, a 3-year vision, an understanding of kind of where they're going. That is, crystal clear. That let me what many people create is not crystal clear, and so it's very vague. There's no specifics. There's no measurables. There's nothing to measure along the way. So talk a little bit about what you did to create a road. I'm using your words because I'm in alignment with it. A clear roadmap so everybody understands what they're doing.
So
what to do.
My group ran the P&L. So we were in charge of the way that we paid, or the way that I paid my folks, was on market share and profitability. Mm-hmm. So they were partners with the sales team, and we would set goals together at the prior to any quarter starting or any fiscal year starting with what did we want to accomplish? What products did we want to be able to ship? What customers did we need to acquire? What segments of the market did we need better market share in? What regions did we need to prosecute? Did we need to change our channel marketing collateral? What did we need to do? So it was pretty clear at the beginning of a quarter what we were going to do by the end. And then it was just coaching them through it. Every 2 weeks, they'd come in and present, where are they at? Where's their market share at? What problems are they having? What help do they need? How's our P&L looking? Are we getting all the products to the right places? Is our customer base, our breadth of customer, growing, or are we selling the same things to the same people? How are we helping the salespeople? So by putting together, what did we want the outcome to be? We'd back into what did the tactics need to be, and they would be, the team would be part of that. I would say, here's what we're going to do. Here's the revenue. Here's the market share. Here's the profit that we want to make. Now you guys come back and help me with how are we going to get there? And we would iterate that a couple of times, but by the time we started the quarter, everybody knew what they needed to do. Yeah. And we would just iterate. Yeah. And it was, in my opinion, it worked great. I don't know if they would tell you the same thing, but we were successful. We achieved our goals, and we made a lot of money, and we did some pretty remarkable things. Yeah,
I love it. I just wrote something down. I want to talk about market share. I think, right now it's a great time to build market share. It's a great time to, double down, triple down on your brand and build market share. So when you talk about market share, how did you guys look at market share and then say, okay, we're going to grow at X percentage, and then here's how we're going to grow it? Because it takes a lot of work to do it. And I think a lot of people, oddly enough, don't spend a lot of time thinking about market share.
We were very analytical. There's a lot of third-party analysts that look at storage, look at PCs, different verticals that we operated in. So in my group, we had security, we had NAS boxes, we had all the client PCs, notebooks, and desktops. And then I'm sure there's a couple of other set-top boxes. And so we would get the material, any third-party material we could get, look at the data, see what that said, compare that to the customer data, and we'd figure out where we sat in each of those markets, in each of those regions. I mean, I had a pretty big analytics department and some really good people who knew how to look at the data and pull it apart, so that we would review it every week. How are we doing? How are we doing in surveillance in Europe? How are we doing in notebook PCs? In markets that we had never been in or we hadn't been successful in, notebook being one, which is where I actually started from a business perspective. We needed to get the customer's attention. So we put a proposal together, and we found our rabbit, which became one of our closest customers and now still some of my closest friends, in a company called Acer. And they bought our product. We gave them some advantage that we offered to anybody else for the same amount of share that they would give us of their business. But it put Acer on the map and it put WD on the map. And once people saw what was happening, then everybody wanted to know what we were doing. So, there's some different tactics you can take in terms of how do you approach a market. Then you got to throttle back a little bit. You can't be the price leader every time.
Yeah.
But if you're first to market, boy, use that advantage to grow your market share. But you got to measure it. I've so many times I've heard people say, "We're so small, it doesn't matter." It always matters, because you might be small in total, you might be big in one place, small in another, and you may be using your assets completely inappropriately because you don't know what you're targeting at.
Yeah.
And so we segmented a lot.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to.
And with that, we reported it every week. Here's where our market share is at. And
yeah,
that was super important. And we had goals. And if we didn't meet them, we'd figure out how we were going to go get that done. And so that was, the analytics was super important.
Yeah. No, amen to that. You said about getting people's attention. That's so important today, right? We all have a attention span less than a goldfish. So, we got to keep people's attention. When I was, I majored in journalism and economics. And one of the things they talked about in journalism is, you want to be fast, first, and right. So you're talking about first to market. I mean, those are some powerful things. Cindi, you've shared so many. I feel like I just took, and I always feel like this, but I feel like it's a little bit extra. When I interview, I love to meet new people, talk to people, learn from people. And to me, it's like a mini master's class. But today I feel like I took kind of like a PhD a little bit. We dove in.
Oh, wow.
I'm really glad Dave introduced us, and I appreciate all your insight. I have a couple last minute speed round questions. You ready?
Sure.
All right. Best favorite book and why?
Little Women, Louisa May Alcott. I started reading that when I was in first grade, and I took that book with me everywhere. The lessons in that book were just something that I just resonated with me.
I just watched the new movie with my wife and my daughter, and it was great. It was such a beautifully done movie. We loved it. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Wow. Don't take yourself too seriously, and don't believe your own BS.
That's a great one. That's a great one. Define yourself in one word.
Resilient.
That's a great word too. You're filled with great words today. Finish this sentence. The one thing people need to do to finish 2020 strong is
focus on the things you can control, not not the things that you can't. Know where you want to be when we come out of 2020. Set a goal for yourself, something achievable, something that you can control, and make it happen. That will give you momentum going into 2021 to tackle whatever comes our way.
I love it. And my last question, fast forward 100 years, what do you want your legacy to be?
I want people to say that I helped people grow into positions, and I want my people to be leaders of the company. I want my legacy to say, gosh, when we look at the leaders of the company, for the 20 years after she was there, or however long it was there, here are the people that that are her legacy, and then there's their legacy. I want them to be super successful, and I want them to pass it on. So if there's any wisdom I had, anything that I gave, I would say take a seat at the table, be diverse, know your customer. If you don't know your customer, and he's always right, then you won't succeed. But I want my legacy to be a bunch of successful people who feel good about where they were in their careers.
Good. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, Cindi, if they want to connect with you.
You can get me on Facebook. Cindi, or my email is cindigrace63@gmail.com. And LinkedIn, oh my gosh, I'm Cindi Grace on LinkedIn too. I think you can find me everywhere as Cindi Grace. Cindi with an I.
All right, good. Cindi, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you taking time to be on the show. Thanks for talking about, just looking at metrics, getting people's attention, zooming out and looking at the importance of accessibility customer service, the power of mentorship, the right mentors who want to see you grow and succeed. And another shout out to, what's Kathy's last name?
Ron.
Kathy Braun. Thank you, Kathy Braun. And thanks for taking time to talk with me and the Think community. I appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Thank you. I appreciate it too. I'll leave you with this. People are your most important asset. So take care of them.
Yeah.
It's all about the team.
Amen to that. Have a great
weekend,
Cindy.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for